My name is Silvana Storey and I am a change management consultant, mainly changing for organizations, so behavioral change and culture change. And within that I look particularly at leadership, employee engagement and diversity. The reason why I began to study diversity was to do with my background. So I have 6 races in me and was brought up in 5 different countries. And I've worked in about 58 countries as well. And whilst I was working as a consultant internationally, I observed that leaders didn't have necessarily the capability to transfer their skills from one environment to another foreign environment. So that from a cross-cultural perspective, leadership capability was severely lacking. And then as I started that journey, as I became more senior in my position, I started to experience a lot of significant discrimination, including people saying to me that I was too black to be in this white middle class environment. I was too intellectual and therefore too much of a threat to them. And even if I was interviewing for jobs, I was told I wasn't employed because of my colour. And so those kind of triggers made me even more steeped into diversity. Well, for me, diversity encapsulates many different things. So of course you have diversity in terms of the way people physically look, so in terms of gender, in terms of sexuality, physical ability, religion, those kinds of demographic differences. But also it's more about different ways of thinking and different ways of being. So as individuals we all have our own DNA and therefore our own differences that we bring to the table, and for me that's diversity. So structural diversity is really the demographics and the structural and systemic differences within the organization. So your structures, for example, do you have a hierarchical structure or do you have a flat structure? And how does that support or not diversity? Do you have recruitment and retention systems in the organization that encourage diversity or prohibit diversity? So those kinds of systemic and processes in organizations that can either facilitate a more diverse workplace or not. Cognitive diversity, which is different ways of thinking. So we all have different ways of, for example, perceiving, interpreting, reasoning, processing, analyzing. It's very rare that everyone thinks exactly in the same way or has the same thought process. And that's why, for me, cognitive diversity is very important, because it also links to innovation in an organization. How do we innovate and how do we create? The third strand is, third dimension for me is behavioral diversity. So behavioral diversity looks at things around the different ways we communicate, the different ways we engage our employees, conflict management, managing power and politics in an organization, looking at our culture and assessing our values. So all those key softer issues that an organization has just lurking beneath or behind it is what behavioral diversity encapsulates. There are a host of excuses from organizations, and in my mind they are exactly that, excuses. So for example with women, it's often, particularly women into senior management positions, it's often, oh well, maybe they'll probably leave us and go and have babies and then they don't want to come back, and they lack ambition, they lack experience, those kinds of issues, or people from ethnic minorities haven't studied to a certain level, so they don't have the skills to integrate and to contribute. So there are a host of excuses that organizations bring to the table. My main thing is that it's because of fear. So fear of of losing power, fear of losing status, fear of losing rewards, fear of the unknown, fear of how different people and different opinions will integrate and what that might produce. So all for me underscored by fear. Until diversity is seen as a change management program, sorry, there won't be much difference. It will just be edging forward slightly, and until it's on the agenda, strategic agenda of an organization, again, it will only go forward slightly. So it needs to be led by a leader, and it needs to be on the strategic agenda, the top 5 items, not just to mentioned at the end of a company meeting, but actually discussed in terms of the overarching strategy of an organization.